Oh, hey. They're here. They're alive.
Fine. Do what you...
You're awake, Mr. Pierce. How do you feel?
Did I sleep long?
The day is only starting. It's fine.
How's our fugitive? Dr. Fuller hasn't reported your disappearance to the force, but that'll come soon.
Bradley?
Who else would it be?
Mr. Pierce, are you all right? You look like you saw a ghost.
There are things I can't explain.
Tell us. What happened?
Is the implication here that, I mean, one interpretation is that he actually managed to fall asleep in the asylum and nothing that happened in between happened at all? You're suddenly here. Aren't you the one that let me out of the asylum? I think. Can't do that option at all. Now with proper cult powers.
I found a file bearing Sarah Hawkins' name in the Institute's basement.
It makes sense. A powerful family like the Hawkins had the means to hide such a disgrace.
But everyone knows the Fullers have been taking care of the Hawkins for at least a generation. And all were aware of Mrs. Hawkins' fragility.
Perhaps, but no one would allow a psychiatric internment.
From what I read in the file, Fuller used her as a subject of his experiments.
Francis Sanders and Sarah Hawkins, subjects of Dr. Fuller. Why those two?
Given the energy he pours into Riverside, I presume it was Fuller's creation.
His father's, to be correct. He was a surgeon on board the Scylla. He founded the hospital in 1904 with funds from the Hawkins family before he died and his son Thomas Fuller took over.
Two families inextricably linked.
Most island families are that way. Captain Fitzroy's father was also a seaman aboard the Scylla.
Powerful families dominating everything.
Yes, and as you could tell, Dr. Fuller is like some crazed emperor.
He wouldn't be happy if he knew we were snooping around.
I know the risks. I don't fear him. Do you wish to know anything else?
I mean, do they have my identity? It's a little hard to not know that I'm investigating, considering I was there and I escaped. Unless they just don't keep names of the people they have.
Dr. Fuller seems to be leaving a trail of corpses. Not to mention those strange machines, and chains, and tools of all kind.
Yes. I've been telling you that Fuller uses his patients as guinea pigs.
What I saw was more akin to torture than medicine.
Do you even hear what you're saying? Dr. Fuller is highly respected.
It's the truth, Ethan. And I'll prove it to you. I'm listening, Mr. Pierce.
I heard you talking earlier.
Why am I not surprised?
I get the impression you two don't get along.
Intrusive and not very clever. Anyway, let's get back to the business at hand.
I get the impression you two don't get along. Intrusive?
What I'm sure of now is that the Hawkins case isn't just an accident.
And what brings you to that conclusion?
The fact that Charles Hawkins survived the fire.
I don't understand. Mr. Hawkins was buried.
That's what he would have you believe.
I have a hard time believing you.
You were there, Bradley. You even opened fire on him.
I'd remember that.
Why would he fake his own death? Do you think he covered up his wife's murder?
That's possible.
Seems hard to swallow. Don't you have anything more concrete, Pierce?
I feel like we're not talking enough about the fact that we all remember different histories, basically. I like that I have to be a medical professional to identify that he should be dead from the death that he had.
Bradley, what do you remember?
I don't understand your question.
The night we went into the Hawkins mansion. You don't seem to remember the tunnels and what occurred there.
No memory of going down any tunnel. No, we were in the manor, then,
Then what?
The rest is quite blurry. I don't recall how I came back home.
And then?
I went to visit you at the hospital and called on Marie's help to get you released.
And you don't remember the events of the tunnel?
I don't. Let's talk about something else.
Makes him uncomfortable, but it's important. He said, okay, so we're confirming. Oh, look at his face. I wonder if I've affected his sanity on some level. That's like a really concerned expression, actually. I'm wondering. So that kind of verifies our story, not in its entirety, but just the fact that he acknowledges a memory blank. He doesn't have an alternate explanation. So it's not that we just dreamt it all up. He confirms the hospital too. Because like until this conversation, one thing you could think is that I just went to sleep and woke up and had dreamed all that crazy stuff somehow, which, you know, we've had fortune teller dreams already, but he verified the hospital part happened, or at least him visiting us. That doesn't necessarily mean the cave and the cellar were real. We were in the hospital somehow, and she presumably helped us escape, which I wish we talked to her about that, because then we could verify that part happened. Although I feel like she largely did verify everything from the cellar. So what we had was real. You died and don't remember how you died. And that's on you at this point, I guess. And that's not our failing or our delusion, I think.
I have flashbacks. They haunt me.
What did they do to you?
There was that Dr. Fuller and a nurse. Blood everywhere. My legs, the pain, I couldn't bear it. I was screaming. They injected me with something. I woke up at the Institute. Bradley was there.
And how you scared us. You seemed demented.
You likely woke up during the anesthesia. No wonder those memories haunt you. What in God's name were they doing to you?
What happened afterwards?
When I woke up the second time, I was in a padded cell. That's where you found me, Doctor. After you released me, I got a good look at what's in store for the patients of the Riverside Institute. Hallucinogenic gas pumped into the cells. An infernal machine, horrific medical experiments.
Impossible. Dr. Fuller would never do such a thing.
You should believe it, Ethan. What Mr. Pierce saw is precisely what I've been trying to prove. Did you discover anything else?
I met a Francis Sanders. Do you know him?
Of course, he's a patient. Or was. I haven't seen him since Dr. Fuller had him transferred to the basement.
He knew Sarah Hawkins, and that's what killed him.
What? How did he die?
I'm not sure I can explain it.
Tell me how Mr. Sanders died.
I didn't see what, but something was there, with us.
Of what do you speak?
Sanders said it was Sarah Hawkins' visitor. He spoke of it like a living being.
Sarah Hawkins? Have I missed something here? This makes no sense. I don't see how it can help crack the Hawkins case.
You really think she's involved? How could she have murdered Mr. Sanders?
Francis Sanders mentioned Mrs. Hawkins just before dying. It's no coincidence.
You know, Francis Sanders was a well-known art collector. I guess you can still pay a visit to his wife, Irene Sanders.
An art collector, you say? That's probably how they met.
If you plan on having dinner at the Sanders household, please spare the widow the tale of her late husband's suffering.
I don't agree. She deserves the truth.
But that truth may be biased. We don't know the bottom of it.
You're right. Without a plausible explanation for what I saw, let's not jump to conclusions.
That seems wise indeed.
Very well. I'll go to see Francis's widow. Perhaps I'll find a link between her husband's death and Sarah Hawkins.
Don't end up in the hospital this time.
I'll do my best.
We just now got Fuller added. Age 52. Riverside Senior Physician. Dr. Fuller reigns as the undisputed master of the Riverside Institute and of its cellars, in which he carries out illegal experiments on his patients. I don't know what he's done to me, but I shouldn't be back on my feet so soon after my fall, when the tunnels under the Hawkins mansion caved in. This man's dangerous, and I'd swear he knows more about all this business than he's willing to tell. I've probably got fishman DNA in me now. Hooray. So it begins. I'm just walking around, huh? I mean, that's one upside, is they did bother taking care of our legs. They may have done it in a accidental sort of way, or just for their own ends and not caring what the outcome is, but they did fix our legs. You need a drink. Whoa. When the text was fading out, something else came in. It might have just been a spiritual, like a cloud effect or something, or a tentacle. But I totally thought it said like 70% or something like that. I totally thought that it said like like it accidentally revealed the statistical background detail of how it works. I'm not sure though. At this point, I feel like this guy deserves a drink after the shit that he's gone through. Even though it might make things worse, or might be a way of combating the insanity, is a drink to lose track of how bad things are a little bit. I could kind of go either way on how the game might interpret that, as either losing control or you pushing back and kind of repressing the bad.
The other night's events are still confused in my head.
The other nights? How long was I in the hospital?
Let us go now and learn the truth about what's happening on this island.
I kind of thought I would have been there longer. I guess it healed me fast. I seem to be able to run normally without a limp. It's a bouncy run, but it's not leaning to one side like it was before. So I take that to mean that I'm good now. They could have used that cave-in and that wound as an excuse for me to suck at moving for the rest of the game, especially for like running away from anybody for stealth and other reasons. Well, that's for leaving. Let's check upstairs. Speaking of questioning sanity, why are we here? I want to point out we're at the mansion. Oh wow, those are all messed up. He claims he got me from the Institute. Why are we all at the mansion? I don't live here. You don't live here. She doesn't live here. There's no reason for us to be meeting here at the mansion. Like, this bothers me. I'm kind of wondering if this entire... I don't know, I was kind of thinking maybe this entire scene isn't real, because it's so pretty and serene and full of happy ambiance. Is the implication you two were arguing and I just came up here and went to sleep? The idea that we were like here having a debriefing for a while and I went upstairs to be like, I have a headache, and I just went to sleep upstairs, and they're like, good, you're awake, like who knows, hours later. But then we did a full debriefing as if we haven't done any debriefing up until now, like we hadn't been talking. You think we would have been talking on the way here? Like, how did we get here in a car together? None of us live here. And he was specifically saying he doesn't want anybody coming up here, and that's unnecessarily, because it's going to freak out the groundskeeper. So specifically, the cop is against anyone coming up here And all we did was come up here to what? Presume this tea isn't even ours. We just sat here and talked for a bit. I don't see why we came to this mansion. I'm thinking that it feels like this isn't real, but I made a decision that the game said will affect my fate. So I'm extra confused. Chapter 6, Sanders' Residence. Pierce, Colden, and Bradley decided to team up to solve the Sarah Hawkins case. They have a new trail to follow. Francis Sanders, an art collector and friend of the painter, who died right in front of Pierce. The detective goes to his house in order to speak to his widow about the shambler that the unfortunate man mentioned before he died. I don't want to deal with the shambler. It's probably going to come out of the paintings like The Ring.
What can I do for you, sir?
Mrs. Sanders, I'm a private detective. We must talk about your husband and his ties to Sarah Hawkins. Can I come in?
You may. However, before we go any further, please know that my husband died yesterday.
That is precisely what brings me here.
Well, well, look who's here. You know each other.
We met briefly. Time enough to iron out a few matters. The main thing is that we understood one another. The brave detective has a talent for sticking his nose into my business.
I bump into her every time I'm investigating someone's death.
It's a small island, Detective. My island. It's better that it's you bumping into me.
You're investigating Francis' death. Why? Who hired you?
I spoke to Francis before he died. His story suggests a link to a case I'm working on.
Well, since this business has got nothing to do with me, I'll be in your husband's office, Irene. We'll carry on later.
Very well, Miss Baker. This way, Mr. Pierce. And do make yourself comfortable. It would seem that you have much to tell me. May I inquire as to when you had the opportunity to talk to my husband?
Yesterday, I met him at the hospital. He spoke to me about Sarah Hawkins.
Oh, of course he spoke to you about her. That's all he talked about. Sarah Hawkins and her paintings. Please forgive my tone. The fact is that I have not been allowed to see him since he was interned. You, on the other hand, a perfect stranger, were able to see him and even talk with him the day he died. How was he? Were you present when he had this attack? What happened?
You're very vibraty, aren't you? The idle animation... What is that? The idle animations are bizarre in this game. Like, what is this? She like starts vibrating and like rapidly moving, and then she completely stops, and then she starts doing it again. It's just weird. Just a nice little animation where she just sits there and breathes would look nicer, honestly. You must not feel guilty. Oh, we don't have that one. Nope. He died screaming right before my eyes.
I expected to find you more grief-stricken than this by the death of your husband.
I do not like the tone of your allusion, sir. I had long months to weep every tear in my body, and to accept, if not my fate, at least that of my husband. And so I'm sorry to disappoint you if you're expecting more hysteria and grieving widow in my voice. Rest assured, however, my anger is real. I need to understand. How could this happen? In a reputed institute? And right before your eyes? Did you not do anything to help him?
So ask Fuller, he's the eminent doctor. But I would caution you, You'll find his treatments more terrifying than the illnesses he sets out to cure.
That churl no longer takes the trouble to receive me. He sends his secretary to tell me that I cannot see Francis. Me. His own widow. He must think that I am a terrible wife for having abandoned him in such a way. But I only wanted what was best for him.
I'm not here to condemn you, Mrs. Sanders.
Oh, I'm tired, Mr. Pierce. I would be grateful if you could tell me what you expect of me, and then leave.
Did your husband talk to you about Sarah Hawkins' visitor? A shambler, to use his precise terms.
Well, you can imagine that's all he talked about. It's exhibited at the center of the gallery. No better place for the painting that endowed him with the privilege of such a shameful and miserable end to his life.
Hold on. The Shambler is a painting by Sarah Hawkins.
Who else to paint such horrors? Take a look for yourself, if you feel so inclined.
It is my only lead at this stage. I suppose I have nothing to lose.
Then you have paid no heed. For my part, I refuse to set foot in that gallery again. But if you're so eager to see it...
Thank you, Mrs. Sanders. I won't be long.
Hey, 2 CP. That works for me. Almost there. Almost there. Add to the list. Irene Sanders, 41. That's an age gap, huh? No, it's only 6. I keep thinking he's over 50. It's clear that she holds Sarah Hawkins responsible for the death of her husband. But what I don't understand about Irene Sanders is this mix of sadness and insensitivity. It looks like she has given up on her husband long before this horrid death in the cellars of the Riverside Institute. Probably suspecting infidelity. This idea that maybe Francis Sanders was involved with Sarah Hawkins, which it's just one thing to suspect when you keep talking about somebody constantly, but it's we know it's probably because he was losing his mind. But you just talk about that. Just talk about Sarah and the Shambler and her paintings all the time. I'm a pianist. I'm beautiful.
The day the Shambler came into the Sanders' lives.
Why would you buy that? That's horrible. I have to run from that? Oh. Photograph of Sarah Hawkins next to the Sanders. They must be close. Can we not go into the freaking room that's gonna make us go crazy?
Did she really care for him after all?
Dear Madam, I acknowledge the receipt of the letter in which you demand the body of your deceased husband. I'm sorry to inform you that I cannot agree to return his body to you. At the moment of his interment, you signed a discharge allowing me to dispose of his body as I see fit. I extend my deepest condolences to you, Thomas Fuller. Yeah, you're a real piece of shit, you know that? Hello. I just wanted to have a nice walk around, talk to people, investigate things, pick dialogue options and skills kind of game. I don't really want it to turn into a survival, not really survival, but a horror game out of nowhere where we have to run away from bad things. But I think that's where we're going.
A house of artists. Francis Sanders and Sarah Hawkins were close. Friends, even?
You based that on the fact that you saw a teacup?
A house of artists.
A photo is probably a better indication, I suppose. You just liked horrible paintings, right? Or paintings of horrible things, I mainly mean.
Sanders' accession register. He wrote beside the Shambler, "Finally." What did Sarah Hawkins fear so much that she didn't want to sell the painting?
The fact that it's a monster. Whoa, hello painting, suddenly. like a hiding spot. Literally the same hiding spot from the previous game. Or previous zone. Okay, am I gonna hide from someone in here?
He finally won. Was Sanders aware of his imminent doom?
I mean, I generally presume people don't actively pursue their own doom.
She first refused to sell the painting. How did that make her feel? Was she jealous of Sarah Hawkins?
Definitely.
The Shambler. I need to see it.
Why? No. No. You stupid man. It made him rip his own eyes out. You don't need to see it. You don't need to see it at all. Did they all, like, come back in? These are all just the general clues I found by chapter. Yeah. Whereas that's the glyph is the actual thing, is the actual chapter description. Is it the time we found the symbol? In the cellars of the Riverside Institute, in one of the cells of the asylum, the same symbol written in black chalk and repeated over and over again on the padded walls does make one think. It represents a 5-pointed star with, in its center, what could be a twig, a branch, or a feather. A few cryptic phrases accompany the drawings, but they do not seem to have a logical meaning. There is mention of a look, a portal, and a painting. Finally, the patient's file, which fell when the guards tried to take him out, reveals that he received a visit from Sarah Hawkins. Cross-checking the information given by Francis Sanders and his widow, it is possible to reconstruct the events that led to the internment of Sanders. Everything points to Sanders and Sarah Hawkins being close, linked at least by the interest the collector showed in the artist's work, but more probably by a certain friendship, attested to by the repeated refusals of Sarah Hawkins to sell the paintings called The Shambler. Against all expectations, she finally gave it away for free. The feelings still shown by Irene Sanders towards the Sarah Hawkins are evidently derived from what she considers to be the artist's responsibility. Madness struck Sanders a short while after he gained possession of the painting.